Hi, this is Jeff Kay with Kristina Lucia. I appreciate my podcast guest joining. We are on Before 1950 Memory Lane to hear about inspirational stories, traditions, and things of that nature. Christina is a creative powerhouse. She has she has a ton of creativity. She's an artist, she's a creator, she's an author. Um, she started Italian cooking at the age of 7 years old. So, with that, Christina, the floor is yours, so to speak.
Thank you for having me. No, I was drawn to I'm always pitching the podcast, and I was drawn when you said walk down memory lane because my heritage, my Italian heritage, does influence a lot of what I've done. It definitely started at a very young age. So it's really a great pleasure to be in a platform, be in a space where we're focusing on that heritage, on those memories. Because with this digital age, obviously, I can't say I hate technology because we're connecting through technology, but there is something beautiful of that time before all the gadgets kind of really came up. And there is something beautiful about that. And I recognize that the current generation, children in my life, my nephew, godchild, et cetera, there are certain memories that I realize are very precious to me because we didn't have certain things, and you made do with what you had, and I wouldn't trade those memories for the world. They're really beautiful, and so I appreciate you giving me the space to share those memories that I share a lot when I'm blogging, but I don't always share it in podcasts.
My pleasure. So, what inspired you to start Italian cooking at the age of 7?
So I actually started cooking even younger than that. My mom, my grandmother were very avid cooks, and I was by the time I was 3 years old, I was pushing the kitchen chair over. This is like before the days of the tower. We had the kitchen chair. That's what we had, and I pushed it up and I would help. And some of my earliest memories are the meatballs. You take your eggs and your seasoning and your breadcrumb and your Romano cheese, and you whip it all up and then you squish. So before I had the reflexes to whip, I would squish in. My mother and my grandmother were very avid about making homemade pasta. My grandmother would straddle the broomstick between the two counters and put dish towels on the floor so that the pasta could dry. And my mom continued that tradition. She would make pasta every Sunday. The piano, her dining room table, the windowsills of the living room, they were always covered with wax paper with dry pasta, and then dish towels covering it. So that became very natural to me to do that. And as a child into my teen years, I started taking on some of these responsibilities. Although, as the oldest girl in an Italian family, you do respect that your mother's the matriarch, and so mom would lead certain things. But as I got older, and unfortunately, we lost our mom in 2019, and oh, thank you. And it was kind of like it's kind of ironic because with the girls they're different. They're very different with the girls, and it was kind of like that fight of, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And so behind my mom's back, there were a lot of things that I taught myself that my mom would allow me to do in front of her, even though I knew how to do it because I've been doing with her for so many years. And the flip side is that I have been making the raviolis for my family at Christmas dinner for the past several years. And it's really beautiful being able to stand the same place that my mom would stand, and everyone's still enjoying the food and that culture. I would watch my mom make we call it gravy because we put meat in our sauce. That's why we don't call it tomato sauce. We call it gravy. And so same thing, I learned at a very young age, the process is not a complicated process, but again, it's one of those things where it was kind of understood, watch and learn. It wasn't necessarily like a babysitting, like, okay, now do this, now do that. It was more like, pay attention, you need to learn this. And it kind of came to me very naturally. And so I just kind of took it on by, I would just train myself to observe and then just do it. And the beauty of this is I am also an avid baker. And again, like there are things that I bake that my mom and grandma didn't bake, but that's the beauty of it, is that with each generation, I imagine my nephew and future children to come in our family will do the same thing. There's going to be things that I don't necessarily do that they add on to. And that's the beauty when you're able to open up that path. Like another thing I always joke about. So my mom had these egg and wine biscuits. They were my grandma's recipe, my mom's recipe, and she would not let me bake them. She said, nope, it's my cookie. I'm baking it. And so I learned on my own. And I'm grateful I did, because it's a very simple recipe. But as those of you out there that know, sometimes the simplest recipes are the hardest recipes. And there's a certain way you roll and loop these biscuits. And also, I actually made adjustments to the recipe. I actually added more eggs to one of them to make the dough a little bit softer, more pliable for me. And, but again, if I didn't practice, and the first year my mom was gone, I'll never forget it. It was like a month and a half after she passed. When I pulled those egg biscuits out of the oven, I heard my mom's voice, and I heard her say, I'm proud of you. Like, they came out really great. And I heard her mom, my grandmother, say, I'm proud of you, Linda. And it was really beautiful knowing that, and watching my nephew eat that wine biscuit from start to finish. And he's only 2.5. He's not quite 2.5. He's almost 2.5. But like, still, we all know toddlers are not always like eating things from start to finish, but watching him eat that wine from start to finish, like it warms my heart. I know it makes my mom happy, my grandma happy, because they're watching us, and it's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember my grandmother when she was alive. She passed away in the 90s, but everybody was looking forward to her banana cream pies.
Yes. Yep.
And
Yep.
that was passed down to my mother, and it was passed down to my
Yeah.
sister.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now that my sister's doing it, she's like, I never realized how much work went into this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Because I started so young, I was aware. And it's funny because I have other relatives that started later. And it's funny because my mom's generation tells me, well, Kristina, because you've been doing it since you were a kid. Like, how much work you were always helping your mom, or you were doing it yourself. But honestly, like, I imagine your sister finds joy in it, because it is a love. Like, it is, I genuinely love it. Like, I can't imagine not doing it, and I am honored that my family has given me the opportunity to make the ravioli, that they have given me the space to do that. And, it's really beautiful the way we run the holidays right now, because, my brother-in-law does certain things, and I do certain things, and my sister will do certain things. And it's like a tag team, like, okay, you handle this for Christmas Eve, I handle this for Christmas Day, and Easter, another family friend is taking care of it. So I have it in my radar to check in with family and say, hey, should I bring the sweetbread? Because we do the sweetbread and they've got the pie. But, I don't want to step on toes for the hostess. So, if they don't, I'll make it for my friends here. But there's something also beautiful about recognizing taking turns, because it's very easy with the holidays and with these traditions to be like, I want to do it. I want to be in control. But I've been learning on my own healing journey to take a step back and realize, okay, maybe you don't make it for this gathering, but you know what? You have friends here, because my family's out of town. Like, I'll make it for my friends here in New York, and I'll make it for other people, and that's okay. It's all right. And, even with the holidays, my mom would do everything. My grandma would do everything. And it is a conscious decision to step back and be like, stop. You're doing the majority of Christmas dinner. Let someone do Christmas Eve. It's okay. You don't have to regret yourself. It's okay to pour a glass of wine and go to the room and socialize for one of the gatherings. It's okay. Like, you don't have to do everything, it's okay. Let somebody else take care of the kitchen. It's okay. Like, it's all right, because it does conjure up these inner child feelings in us, because they do, like you said, the banana cream pie, that sounds like it brings up feelings of comfort, of security, of
Yeah.
consistency. And, for every culture, we all have something different. For my friend who's Jewish, for them it's their challah bread. For him, he says the challah bread, that bread. And he's told me, like, his wife started making it, and then his mom got mad, and his mom started making it. It's this battle. But then, when you take a step back and say, okay, why are we battling? Why? Okay, do we take turns? Do we each find a different dish that's like our thing to contribute? Because
Sure.
reality is, it really is boiling down to feelings and how we connect with each other and how we gather. And there's something really beautiful about that when we're able to recognize that.
That's awesome. So, how big is your family?
It's a big family, but everyone tends to gather in more close groups. So our gatherings that I go to are anywhere, I want to say there's about 15 of us, I think, which
Oh,
is like
wow.
pretty average. I mean, if we
Sure.
really were all together, I mean, it could be like 30 to 50 easily, but I think it's kind
Wow.
of understood that people want to gather with their immediate families. I'm the nutcase that does a lot of visiting. I always budget time to like go and visit and whatnot. Like I do a lot of baking around holidays. I do baking throughout the year, but during the Christmas holiday in particular, and also Easter, I tend to bake a lot. And when I do that, I budget for visits. Like I budget to go and bring a box of goodies to people that I baked. That's something that I personally do. But it is tricky. And I'm also learning too that it's not about the number, it's more about the quality. Like,
Absolutely.
why are we gathering? Like, who are we gathering with? We don't have to feed the hordes, you know what I mean? And one of the most beautiful things this past year is my sister's father-in-law complimented me on my pickled peppers. That was part of my antipasta. And then when I got to my raviolis, like everyone was like complimenting me, and like it was so beautiful being acknowledged. It was really, really beautiful. And words affirmation is my love language. Um, having the meal I created from start to finish really be acknowledged and complimented. And again, watching my nephew eat my raviolis is like the best thing in the world. Like it really just like warms my heart like no tomorrow. It really just means so much. Like it means so much seeing people acknowledge it and enjoy it and whatnot. And there's something really really beautiful about that, and recognizing that is really precious.
Oh, good. Well, you can start a catering service to go on with your other
My other
ambition.
creativities.
And,
People have
and
been saying that to me, that have tried my cookies, tell me that. And, it is a different, as a business that I know bits of it, but I don't know a lot of it. But the other thing too is the way I bake and cook is very unique. I bake the way I cook, meaning I don't measure. I have recipes that I've created. I have recipes I use as guidelines, but I'm not good with I'm not, I feel things. I whip things together. So if I were to actually build that out, it would it's definitely a more complex process. Like it's definitely me finding, because right now so much of my creativity is all coming, which is part of the beauty of my business and my books, is that it all comes from me. And so I am finding a way to get it so that my creativity is in a space where it can be repackaged in different ways. It can be
Mhm.
reformatted in different ways, because what people don't
Sure.
realize is that it is very draining. I do create a lot. I do create very quickly. I have a ton of inspiration. And a lot of people, and this is also too where I have to be careful with when I talk about my creativity, is creativity does tap into your inner child. It does bring out, which is good. It brings out that playfulness that's healthy, that we need. But quite frankly, there are inner child work is different for each of us. And a lot of people's inner children come out with you with, you should do this, blah, blah, blah. You should do this. You should do that. Da, da, da. And what they're not realizing is that they're making more work for me, because I have to find a way to be polite and like let them down and express my feelings in a way that I'm not being rude and being a beast, but at the same time, they're also forcing their own inner children at me. And so I'm dealing with my own feelings on top of their feelings, and they're completely unaware. And people that I really am able to communicate and really share with, really listen to me and really respect. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of discipline. There's a lot of years of technique and studying and trial and error that have gone into this, and really appreciate that it is a very unique gift, and it's not something that everyone has, and so that's where I had to be careful when I talk about these things.
Yeah, I remember when my sister was learning how to make my grandmother's banana cream pie. There was no measuring. It's so a dash of this, a dash of that, and
Yeah.
my sister's like, I need measurements. So
Yeah.
it became
Well, that's the thing too with
a
things like
process
this.
of figuring
Yeah.
out. Because I can tell you, the first one she made was not edible.
But that's the thing too, when we get into conversations like this, it's also a realization of us understanding how we learn, how we communicate. Some of us are box people. I'm not a box person. I don't do well with boxes. I'm good with deadlines. I'm disciplined. It's very different than a box. And, and that's the thing too, is we need to respect that. And most of us are box people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're a non-box person like myself, it can make people, it can make people very uncomfortable. And, and people define it in different ways. And it's a strong personality to be able, and it's a lot of personal inner work to be able to step back and recognize, okay, I see how you're working. I'm going to respect this. I'm not going to fight you on this. I'm going to be respectful of it. So yeah, it's a process. It's a process of stepping back and doing that. I have people that tell me, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. And that's another thing too, is respecting the fact, you know what? Sometimes people say one thing and they want the other. And things like this, traditions, memories, like making it work for us, it brings out that inner child. It brings out that critical parent. And if you're willing, it is a beautiful opportunity to take a step back and learn about yourself and learn about others and see, okay, wait, I learned something about me. I got it.
Oh, yeah.
So when someone hands me a recipe and says, hey, would you be interested in making this? You can communicate like, all right, well, I need solid measurements. Like I need solid description. Or if it's someone like me, it's like, all right, you gotta give me wiggle room. You gotta give me room to play. Like you can't box me into this is what I need to do kind of a thing,
Actually,
and there's,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Maybe I was a little harsh on my sister. I shouldn't say it was not edible. It was just different. So
it was different. Yeah, it was different.
But yeah, you bring a point about memories, and I know you've had a look at my website as to my other business, my digital memories, and about what I do. One of the most inspirational things that I've done is I remember a client brought me an 8mm videotape, and she didn't know what was on it. Her father went to Vietnam when she was just a baby, and he never came back. I restored the tape, so she was able to hear and see her father's voice for the very first time. And like food has and tastes and smells and sounds bring back memories. Mm-hmm. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's where we have to give each other the space of how to process that and what our inner child, what our critical parents craving, because we all, at any age level, at any age, regardless of where we are in our lives, who we are, we all work from that same feelings list. Sure. And when we're able to recognize that we work from our feelings, and the other thing too that we have to realize is that communicating our feelings is a work in progress. And it is something that needs to be learned. And it's not something that's always learned. And it is a skill. And even when we do learn it, we still constantly have to keep working on it. And that's also where, as a creative, I realize I need to be patient with people, because with all my creativity, regardless of what it is, it's a constant work in progress. Like, it's a constant practice physically doing it. Like, if we don't walk for a week, we're going to have to readjust our bodies. Like, we learn to walk by doing it over and over and over again. And we correct our walk, or we correct our gestures by constantly working on it. And it is a discipline, it is awareness. And, we have to give each other that space to be able to work on those things and to see where we are. And, we do see things differently. And it's it's a really beautiful process.
Now, you keep mentioning creativity and creativity and creativity.
Yeah.
So let's bridge into some of that. You're an author, you're a creator, you write books, as I mentioned. How did you get into all that?
I've always been a creative. I started formally drawing when I was 7 years old. My parents put me into formal art lessons, and I was learning advanced technique at 7 years old. I was learning how to shade. I was learning perspective. I was learning mixing colors. And the thing about art is, it's not like school the way we know it, where, okay, you pass a grade, you move on. You're still learning the same concepts your entire life, because you're always layering something onto it, or you're always making a new discovery. And there is a discipline, and there's also a playfulness with art. I'm also a competitive dancer, same thing. You learn your steps. That's the very first step of the process. But even the highest level dancers are still working on the same steps, because, again, there's so many layers, and there is this discipline and playfulness that has to go there. And I see my cooking the same way. I see my writing the same way. So I was raised in an environment where I didn't belong, and where it was very clear I was wrong, everybody else was right. And as a result of that, I got myself into careers I didn't belong in, because I was basically told, if you leave, you're on your own. And I needed to make a living. And I wasn't raised in an environment of creatives in my house. And I didn't know how to make a living. I didn't know how to make a living with my creativity. I saw it as, okay, I need to find a job that I can do my creativity in the evening. Is exactly what happened. I was living a double life for a long time. I was working in corporate and on Wall Street for over 15 years. 9 of those years were on Wall Street. And I was drawing and dancing in the evening, and it seemed very natural. It seemed like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. And when I started healing from traumas that I had gone through, both as a child and as an adult, I realized I can't keep doing this. I can't keep denying who I am. I need to be my true self. And my true self is a dancer. My true self is an artist. My true self is a creator. And I started my career pivot and looking into ways that I could bridge this gap. And I realized, when I was about to repeat the corporate pattern again, I declared myself an entrepreneur. I realized I can't do this again. I'm going to go down the same rabbit hole.
Well, let's see. Since I can't even draw a circle, and I know nobody would ever wants to dance with me because I have no rhythm. So all that's out. But I did spend 17 years in the corporate world. So I get that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I'm kind of a rebel. I'm out of the box. Rules and me don't fit. As a matter of fact, when my parents died, I was going through my grandfather's wallet, and I found a picture about the size of a postage stamp, which turned out to be his grandmother, or his mother, rather. So I started to do some genealogy on both sides of the family. And only to find out, going back to 1890, on both sides of my family, they were all entrepreneurs. It's no wonder I didn't fit in the corporate world. Um, but the one thing, and I'll go back to you on this, is the fact that going from a corporate world where you depend on a salary to being an entrepreneur where you actually make money with your own hands and doing it yourself, it's really rewarding. It's very rewarding. It's another skill that you need to teach yourself because when my kids were in school, so yes, I'm old. Um, they always everything is a set way that you have to do it. So I kind of find these days, from a school perspective, they're kind of taking kids out of that independent creativity process and saying, oh, you got to get a job. It's safer. It's this. But one, that's not always the case. And two, I think it's important to nourish your creativity. Find, or I should say, get out of your box. Find what you like. So that's awesome that you were able to get out of your box and find where you belong. That's really awesome.
Well, I have no box, period. I
Exactly.
never had a box. That's why I didn't fit into corporate.
Yeah, that's
I
like
should clarify that. I didn't have a box. But you know, at the end of the day, I don't regret my time in corporate because I learned a lot that I'm able to do right now. And quite frankly, not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone's meant to do this. You know, what I do is very unique. I've met other people that say they're entrepreneurs and they're not. They're not an entrepreneur the way I'm an entrepreneur. I am a very rare breed of an entrepreneur. And again, this all falls back into understanding who you are and respecting who you are and understanding that. At the same time, the reason why I'm such a rare breed of an entrepreneur is because I am one of those people that is highly creative, but also highly disciplined. You don't always see that. I'm highly analytical, but I'm also very creative. I'm a forward thinker. I'm an overachiever. I'm a unicorn. Like I have yet to meet, I probably have met maybe only one or two other entrepreneurs that are playing in my field. Like quite frankly, it's a very rare breed. But with that, it can be lonely sometimes. A lot of people think they understand what I'm saying. They think they go, oh, I'm like you. And I'm listening to them. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, sorry. But that's the thing too. I'm very fortunate. My marketing strategist, Melanie, is amazing. And she gets me because we're both that unique breed, I believe. Like we're both overachievers. We're both forward thinkers. And she's amazing. I mean, she really, but she under like, as like because with books, like you really have to find your way to people that understand that business. It's a very, like any business, every business has their own breed. And Melanie, my publishing agent, Susie, my editor, Susan, they live and breathe the business. They understand the business. And that's like a huge thing. And there is something about that click. And these women understand, like Melanie, I interact with the most and she gets my personality. She nourishes my overachieverness where some people get intimidated by it. My editor, Susan, loves the fact that I'm a creative as well. Like she also loves that I have no box, but yet she knows how to ground me in a way that she doesn't stifle my creativity. And
that's
that's
awesome.
yeah, it's like, but again, like it's going down that rabbit hole and it is a bit. And because people don't realize as an entrepreneur is that you cannot skip school. And when I say don't, I shouldn't say that. You can't skip certain things. There are certain things you get in a classroom. There are certain things you get in an office that you need to go through. There are certain skills, like there is something about working for somebody that's very important. There are things you need to learn. You can't can't skip that step. You can't, I shouldn't say you can't, that's not fair. I can't think of the right words, so please forgive me, everybody that's listening. But what I'm trying to say is there are things that you learn in that space. The other thing as an entrepreneur that people don't always see, I feel, at least when I talk to people and realize, is that you're constantly creating your own carrot. The carrot doesn't always exist. And again, people say, "Oh, I get it, I get it, I get it." I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And I realize that's rude for me to say that, but like I create my own carrot constantly. And that's why Melanie, Susan, and Susan are my team is working with me. They would not work with me if I didn't know how to create my own carrot. I'll be perfectly honest, especially as a children's author. Children's books are way more complicated than people understand. There's a lot more to the structure. There's a lot more to the business than people see. And it's not everyone wants to hear that. Not everyone wants to listen and understand the complexity of it. And because it is a complex business. And, it's if you don't have those right pieces, it's like a house. It's gonna fall over. There's no other way to describe it.
So how did you get into, I mean, there are a ton of aspects of being an author. You could be a mystery writer, you could be fictional, nonfiction, or whatever. How did you decide on doing children's books?
So when I was still in corporate, knowing that eventually I would pivot before I had an injury that made me realize, like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I can't keep hiding my dancing and my art. I knew I would create something for children because my best audiences are men, teenage girls, and children. I'm way too feminine to design something for men. I'm way too feminine. So I was like, that's out. Like, even though I feel like men are, I always say, like, I feel like I'm able to communicate easy with men. I'm able to share ideas easier sometimes, like when it comes to like a networking situation. Teenage girls, because they gravitate towards me. However, I'm not trendy. I'm more of like a Chanel, Sophia Loren, Audrey Hepburn. I'm more classic. And teenage tweens, it's very trendy. I worked in fashion at one point in my career. It's very fast, very trendy, and that's not my personality. So I realized, okay, this is going to be a thing. And so that's how I knew it was children. And I love kids. I get along great with kids. I'm always babysitting. I'm the aunt. And so I knew, okay, I'm going to design something for kids. And when I started teaching myself to crochet, because my great grandma was a crocheter, and then I taught myself how to knit because grandma was a knitter, and I learned how to sew by default from my mother. I started crocheting blankets at first, baby blankets. And when my friend and his wife were expecting their second baby, that's what led me to create my first stuffed animal, which was a teddy bear. And this is actually while I was recovering from an injury. And when my friend came over and had that conversation with me, like, what are you doing? And I realized I can't keep living this double life. And it was a year into my looking of how to pivot, laying the groundwork of networking and figuring things out, that someone turned to me and said, you have a business here. And I said, really? And so when I declare myself an entrepreneur, one of my ideas is that I actually have one of the characters here with me right now. This is Bella, the main character. She didn't exist
so
at
cute.
the time. Yeah, thank you. She didn't exist at the time that I created the brand, but I had this idea that I had these crochet toys and, I'm going to tell stories to them and see where it goes. And I had a lot of people tell me no. I should rephrase that. I had a lot of people, and people kept gravitating towards this idea as opposed to my other idea. And I was like, okay, let me run with this. And as I started to focus it on more and more, and also I got a huge sign from my mom. The day my mom died was the day I got the first piece of mail addressed to my LLC saying it was approved. And I knew it was my mom. I knew it was my grandma telling me, we need you to do this. And I knew the characters would lead me to an answer. And so people were giving me a hard time. Like, how are you going to create all these things? Like, how manufacturing, blah, blah. I said, no. The characters are going to lead me to an answer. And the characters led me to write my blog, which I still heavily write. The blog led me to realize I'm supposed to write my children's series. And that's what really sparked it. And, now I write 2 different blogs. I have other platforms that I do through the characters. I'm writing this children's series. It's the first of at least 2 or 3 other series I will be writing after this one is fully written and illustrated. And I'm at a halfway point right now in both. I'm over halfway in the writing process, and I'm halfway in the illustration process. I both write and illustrate all my books. And yeah,
That's impressive.
it's really
that's
amazing.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now,
And looking at, yeah, go ahead, please.
is all this on your website?
Everything's on my website. Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
for those watching, the website scrolling across the page. So that's definitely something that you want to visit.
Yeah. Now too, I'm about to go down another rabbit hole. I'm starting looking into manufacturing of the characters because, again, I can't hand create everything. However, I will always have the hand toys created by me available.
Sure.
But, it all started with a belief. Like, it all started with that, and one story that I always love to share, which is why I say, like, I consider myself a unicorn. So Jim Henson, we all know his work. Kermit the Frog started off with his mom's green spring coat and 2 tennis balls.
Oh, wow.
If you're a creative, you'll find a will and a way. My journey started off with a crochet hook and a ball of yarn. And it's just about doing it and doing it and doing it. And, there's not always a clear path. There's not always a clear answer. I've gone down rabbit holes and gotten through them. I'm going down another rabbit hole right now, to be perfectly honest. Like, manufacturing is one of them, press is another, but you go down these rabbit holes and you learn things. I went down a rabbit hole finding my editor. And after going down that rabbit hole for a good month and a half, a friend of mine said, "Haven't you talked to Susan?" And I said, "Oh, it's right. I meant to reach out to Susan." I reached out to Susan, and Susan not only became my editor, but she also invited me to a summit. And that's how I met my marketing strategist, Melanie, and I met even more people than Melanie and my publishing agent, Susie, and I met even more people since then. And so once it clicks, it clicks. But yeah, it's a matter of just trusting yourself and going down that rabbit hole.
That's awesome. Now, if I recall correctly, you grew up in a small town.
I did.
So did growing up in a small town influence your creativity?
If anything, it stifled it. If anything, it frustrated me. Oh yeah. It was very, very small. Like, my dad still lives there. It's a lovely town, don't get me wrong. If anything, I felt out of place. I felt starved for more very quickly. By the time I was in my early teens, I was going into Boston on weekends, and even Boston didn't feel like enough. And when I saw New York for the first time at 10 years old, I said, "This is where I'm going to be." I am that personality that needs a lot of stimulation, that needs a lot of energy around me. And again, that's another thing that I've learned to respect, is that that's what I need. Can I do the quiet? Yes, I can. But over long periods of time, no. Like, I do visit areas of the world that are more calm and remote and love it for vacation. I do visit family and quiet areas where there's no streetlights, and I'm good. Like, I'm good, but I know in the long haul, like, I need to be living where I need to live. And again, that's part of the healing process and understanding that. So I never, like I said, I didn't fit in. I wasn't meant to be there. And gratefully, I had the gumption and the courage to say, I'm going to do this. And at 18, I moved out and didn't look back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
On another note, how do you use your storybooks to help parents and kids improve their communication and deepen their relationships?
Absolutely. So I'm focused on my series and my characters, everything I do, everything I write, everything I do. My mission is communication. So what the books do in particular is that in each book, Bella is learning a skill or she's going through a transition that we all go through. Yes, later in the series, there are things that are more specific, that things that are pieces of me that I'm putting in there. However, even in those environments, she's going to be going through things that we can all relate to, we can all adapt. And what happens in the books is that she experiences negative feelings, and her parents give her space, or a special adult in her life gives her space to feel those feelings. And when she feels those feelings and expresses them, they relate to her as an adult, saying, as an adult, I still go through this. As an adult, this still happens to me. And she's given a special gift, or she's given a space to figure out those feelings and find that way to joy. And then she's able to help a friend. So reading books with your children, or even reading books to yourself, or reading books with your family, it's a very intimate activity. And that when we're reading a story over and over and over again, we're able to adapt it and make it work for us, relate it in a way that works for us. And it opens up that path for relatability. It opens up that path to ask the question, okay, how does this relate to me? How can I apply this? The other thing I do to take it a step further, because I realize, like, for some people it's easier than others. Some of us need more of a map. So in the back of each book, I have a section called Activities Beyond the Book, where I point out things that Bella and the other characters do and give suggestions of how you can apply that to you and your family, because every family is different. Every family is unique. And that's why also, too, I talk about coloring, because someone could easily be listening to me and say, well, that's great, Kristina. You draw, you do this, you do that. You have all these ways to express your creativity. Like you said earlier, I can barely draw a circle. Coloring and doodling is something we can all do. And it has the same health benefits for children as it does for adults. It relaxes us. It calms our nerves. It gives us space to feel and to allow things to flow over us, and to be able to identify with what's really going on and open up those conversations. And also, it gives us room for teaching points. It gives us room to address things in a calm, sane manner. And so that's really how I see this. I see the books that I have coming out. I see the coloring books that I have coming out, in addition to the coloring drawings I always have available on my website. These are all tools for you to take and apply to you and your family, and for you to find out what works best for us. What do we need in this moment? How can I apply and adapt this? Because every family is different. There is no one size fits all with feelings. There is no one size fits all with communication. And the other flip side of this too, how we communicate today does not mean we're going to communicate that way tomorrow, or even an hour from now. And the more we're able to open up that awareness and be patient with each other and give each other space for that, more intimate conversations could be had, more intimate relationships can be made. And it's really beautiful when that happens. It's really amazing.
That sounds amazing. Now, I did have actually have some more questions.
Sure.
You also have limited edition animals, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
What stories brought that to life?
Yes. So Bella, the original name for Bella came from my friend's little girl, because when I originally named the characters, I named them after people in my life. However, when I started writing the actual children's series and realizing, oh, Bella has to be the sole main character, because the original idea was that my grandparents, Lucy and Eddie, would be the main characters. And I realized people were gravitating towards Bella. So I thought, no, I need to make Bella the main character. The more I started writing her, the more I realized that it was me. It was my child self I was writing. And the other flip side of this too is Bella is actually one of my nicknames. I have several friends that call me Bella or Beautiful. And when I started writing, I honestly was scared to admit that Bella was my nickname. So it felt more gracious. It felt more mature to say it was named after my friend's little girl. But the more I wrote, the more I realized, no, I'm talking about being your true self. I'm talking about communication. I need to stand on my own two adult feet and declare and say, this is me, this is Bella. And so the joke of this is that my friend's toddler actually got me to identify with my inner child and stand up as a grown woman and say, Bella's my nickname. This is me. And so leave it to a toddler to make me realize, like, oh, wait, this is me. Like, this is my nickname. It's okay. People are going to think you're selfish because you have a nickname. It's okay. You can do this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, what advice would you have for aspiring artists, creators looking to turn their passion into a career?
The biggest thing that I've learned, the biggest thing that I share is consistency and discipline. Playfulness is very important, but without discipline and consistency, nothing will materialize. So if you're looking to do something, one exercise that's really great is finding something that you can do each day that brings you joy and being consistent with it. Now, for me, like, I realize I'm an overachiever. So I would say, like, for me, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do this for a month and see how it works. If it's not working, I'll adjust, I'll review. It could be less for you. So again, going back to what we talked about with the banana cream pie, recognizing, like, okay, what works for me? What's my limit? What's my number? But the consistency and the discipline needs to be there, because you need to commit to something long enough to be able to look at it and say, is this working for me? And the other big thing is, and I realize this is hard, but I promise you, it is really important, is putting it out there to the world and accepting the good, bad, and the ugly.
Sure.
When you it's not going to be perfect the first time around. My first blogs were not perfect. And a perfect example, an example I give often, it's a perfect example, like, because it just like reiterates exactly what I'm saying. So when the pandemic hit, I started blogging a month before. So I thought, this is the perfect time. I'm going to get up and write a blog a day. I did. 90% of those blogs I never published. But by writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, I developed my writing voice. And I got further ideas of, like, oh, wait, I want to take the blog in this direction, or wait, I want to write about this and whatnot. And by continuing doing that, and even when blogs I published, I've taken down, because I'm like, this isn't really where I'm going now. But by doing that, I got content out there. I got myself going. I got it. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but by taking that step, by exposing it, you're going to get so many more answers you need in order to fine tune the machine. I'm not a car person, so please forgive me for those people that understands this stuff better than I, but I actually genuinely enjoy watching movies about race cars. And I really genuinely enjoy listening to the dialogue, like Ford versus Ferrari, for example, or
I love that movie.
Yeah. Because, like, when they talk about, oh, let's adjust this, like, I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know what the Phillips head is. Like, I really have no idea. Like, I have no idea about tools. That's not even a car tool. That's how bad I am. But what I'm listening to is the strategy. I'm listening to is the strategy, is that they kept on trying things out. They're like, okay, this is our goal. How do we get to our goal? All right, we tried this. Let's tweak this. Da, 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 da. Art is no different. And in addition to my blogs, like, I'm holding Bella right now, so I can use her as an example. When I first created the first stuffed elephant, I spent 3 hours creating her ears, because I must have taken that ear out a dozen times within that 3 hours, because I kept on trying measurements. And first it was too big, and then it was too small. But again, by doing that, I got clarity, and okay, this is what I want her ear to look like. This is the size of her ear. But again, and I get it. I know it's frustrating. I know it can be scary, but I promise, if you are willing to make that commitment and try it out, and even if you try something and you feel like it's working, and a year later you're like, scrap this, you're going to learn something in that year. It's going to be so beautiful. And you never know who you're going to meet or what connection you're going to make through that. that try, and it's really amazing. It's really amazing. I promise beautiful things will come.
It's funny, that story kind of reminds me of the story of Thomas Edison.
Mm.
He didn't fail 999 times inventing a light bulb. He just figured out 999 ways of not doing it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and it is that curiosity. And again, also going back to what we said earlier about other things, like not everyone's made to do this, and it's okay. If you're meant to be in a setting where there's structure and there's clarity already set out for you, that's okay too. Like in this day and age, there does seem to be this pressure to be a certain way. There is more of an acceptance, but at the same time, it's not a bad thing to need that either. And that's also us taking a look inside ourselves and respecting where we are and where we belong. And that's really what it boils down to. And again, if you are saying, well, I'm really a box person, but I'm craving this, like that's a deeper question to ask yourself. That's a deeper question to ask, well, why are you craving this? Why are you looking for this? And again, sometimes you have to go through those periods of that not knowing the answer in order to find the answer and being patient with yourself in that space.
now we have about 10 minutes left. So, can you share a particular story that's heartwarming that you had with a customer who connected with you and your characters and your storybooks?
So I actually, one of my good friends, we actually worked on Wall Street together. She actually worked for a company that my boss covered. And when I was in the midst of my pivot, I actually got laid off from a job that I connected with her through. And we've still kept in touch. And she contacted me and said, I want to order a custom character for you. I'm like, sure, what do you want? And her favorite holiday is Halloween. She said,
Oh,
I
smart.
want, oh, cool, very cool. She said, I want a custom anaconda Halloween snake. And I was like, all right. And for people that know me offline, that know me personally, know I have a fear of snakes and reptiles. I'm not really like a reptile person. But I was like, got it. Like, I'll do it. And so I created this multicolored Halloween scheme snake. Well, about a year after I made the order for her, and she was super happy about it, loved it, very pleased. She said to me, I lost it. We named him Igor. And she said, I lost Igor. I thought, oh my God, what happened? Did something happen in the wash? Because all my toys are made out of organic cotton. I always wash them after I create them, put them in plastic so they're pristine and clean and make sure everything's good.
Sure.
And so I got freaked out. I was like, oh my God, like what happened? And she said, no, my friend's little boy was sick with COVID and he couldn't sleep. And I gave Igor to him, and with Igor, he was able to sleep. And another beautiful story. So my one of my good friends, who also has a lot of my characters, her daughter has chosen the characters that I've created as her crib toys. Of her crib toys, I think 80% of them are toys I've created. And having a toddler choose you and hearing this little boy going through a rough time with COVID, and I know COVID's not the only illness in the world, but hearing a child that's suffering and hearing that your creation helped them sleep through the night, and also to go a step further, hearing that you gave a parent peace of mind, knowing that their child was able to relax and feel comforted, is really beautiful. And with the books coming out, the beauty of it is that the books are going to breathe another life into these characters, in the sense that you're going to be getting to know Bella and her friends in a much deeper way. And also you're going to be breathing further life in her to me, in the sense that you're adapting her to your worlds. And it is really exciting approaching this moment where people are going to be reading the books nightly to their children. Like I'm really I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for that moment because I think it's going to take this a big leap forward.
That's awesome. Now, we only have a few minutes left, but how do people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So I do have a coloring drawing for your audience. I think I sent you the link for it. I always create a coloring drawing for every holiday. I do a pop-up on my website too, which graciously you have scrolling, which is awesome. I have an email list where I always share announcements. Like I said, I write 2 different blogs. I have other things that I always share with the audience. So that's like a great way to keep in touch. I also am on social media as well. I do have a big announcement coming this Wednesday, which I'm super stoked. So Jeff, I have to make sure I have you on my list. I went through this crazy clicking invite thing. I'm like, I hope I got everybody. I wish that was just a select all to make my life easier, but you never know. And
so what is this big?
You'll see. It's coming. It's
Oh,
coming.
it's a secret. Okay.
It's a secret. It's coming. I'm doing teaser videos. Actually, I'll be recording another couple of them today, so I can start. I'm actually releasing another teaser video today. It's like we're doing a little countdown to the big announcement. So yeah, I'm excited to share with you what's coming up.
Please share it with me, and I'll make sure I share it in my post from my channel. And
thank you. I appreciate that.
And maybe we can do a follow up on that and see where that goes.
That'd be amazing. I really appreciate it.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So for everyone who's watching, please feel free to get in touch with Kristina and all her amazing animals and creativity and books. So it sounds completely amazing. And if you would like to be a guest on my show, please reach out. It's on YouTube, LinkedIn, etc. I would love to hear your inspirational story, and that would be awesome. So, Kristina, I so appreciate you taking the time so I can hear about these amazing stories.
Thank you for giving me the space to share. I really appreciate it.
And I really look forward to see what's coming up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It really means a lot to me.
I am so glad. And we will be in touch.
Okay, sounds great. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too.